Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Employment Options for F1 Students and Handshake Resources. Today, my co-host and I, Tina, will be going over visa options for international students. Before her segment, I'll be going over Handshake Resources and what we have to offer online, how to schedule appointments with us and use the different resources on our website, on the Handshake website. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm liaison to international students. I put on a lot of workshops to meet your needs. So it's a pleasure to work with all of you and present you with our resources. So today I'll be going over jobs and internships, how to look for jobs and internships on Handshake, as well as our online resources. Again, please do answer the questions on this website in the chat so that you can win a $25 Amazon gift card so that you could enter the sweepstakes for that. So let's get started. This is Handshake. Your profile on Handshake is very important. So please make sure that it's completed. For example, mine is at 15%, my student account. But for you, it should be mostly complete. That's really important for that because employers can search for you and find you that way. Additionally, once you have a completed resume, you definitely want to make sure that you input that information onto your Handshake account so that you could be found. Make sure that your email is professional and it's the one that you check on a regular basis. A lot of students don't have their phone number, but now that we live in a virtual world, it is important. Sometimes employers, they're not going to call you. We might need to call you, but the phone number can't hurt. Make sure your major is up to date because it can limit you from applying to different jobs. And also jobs you've had. Once you write your resume, I would highly recommend that you input that onto your Handshake account so that, it's just like LinkedIn. It definitely helps you to connect with people. And then also clubs you belong to, skills you've had, classes you've had. You could input all that on both LinkedIn and Handshake. And so the arrows are just showing you different places that those information would be shown to make sure that it's visible to you. Okay, now there is definitely a filter for you to use as international students to search for the different opportunities available. And the filters allow you to filter by location, industry, job function, job type, type of work authorization, as well as major and employer. So if any of those things are important in your search, which most of them are, you want to make sure you use that filter. However, know that the more filter you use, the more focused your search will be. It might make it too narrow, and the less filters you put in, it might become too broad. However, you definitely want, especially when it comes to job function, job type, and possibly work authorization, you definitely want to allow it to filter for that so that you don't that you're looking at jobs that you could potentially apply to, not just any jobs. And so it's really easy. You just click on whichever one you want, job type, internship, on campus. Also, if you're on campus, there is a feature where you can look for on-campus jobs. A lot of jobs are posted that are on campus, so you definitely want to take advantage of that filter. And then down here we have work authorization, will sponsor, doesn't require work visa, accepts OPT, CPT. So if that's checked off, then that employer is okay with hiring international students. Here you can add industry. So maybe you want to be a business analyst, but in the engineering industry, in the oil industry, or in the consulting industry. You could choose all that. In the industry section, job function, it's what you do that would go here. So maybe it would be a business analyst, it would be accounting, it would be communications. Since not all jobs require a major, since not all jobs require a major or are open to many majors, you may or may not need to click on this one or choose this one. However, because international students are required to find internships that are very relevant to their major, this might be a cool feature for you to filter in order to find jobs that are specific to that major. So those are really good ways of looking for jobs and internships on Handshake. The next slide shows you, so after I put in all these filters, it allows you to see all the whole list of jobs. Based on my filters, I found 186 jobs that match my interest. And then on the right is where the first job or whichever one I clicked on is shown in more detail. If I read through and I really like what I see and I want to come back to it, I can star it up here, and then it can end up on my saved jobs on another sheet so that I can find it very quickly. So that's one of the features I really like. And then over here in the green, we have major checked off, GPA checked off, and school year checked off. That means that my profile meets that job's requirement for major, for GPA, and school year. And if your profile is not up to date or accurate on those levels, then it might not say that I'm qualified to apply for that job. For example, if my GPA was lower and now it's higher and I didn't update it, then it's going to tell me my GPA is too low and I can't apply. Or if my school year is not up to par, then it will prevent me from applying. So make sure everything's accurate on your Handshake account. Okay. Now we have how to search for upcoming events. So here we have the different events, like for example, the workshop today would be on here, and you would be able to view the event, see what it's about, and then RSVP for it. So most of you know how to do that as already. If you know of an event, you could do an event search and search it by the name and RSVP for it right then and there. In terms of looking for appointments, that's also available here. So as you can see, there's under appointments, there's a lot of options. Whichever option you would like, you just click on and you would have a appointment with that counselor. Here we have our resources. Under resources, there's first of all, managing your Handshake notifications. This would enable you to learn more about how it would enable you to control how often you get emails about how you're notified about different things that are happening. So if you're if you get emails about your appointments being canceled, or maybe your RSVP to a specific event, or like our newsletters. You get to manage how you're notified. So just keep in mind that a lot of times if you um, elect not to be notified that often, then you won't know if there's a change. Maybe there's an update. These days with Zoom, when we put in the workshop, we don't always have the Zoom information right when we plan it, and we enter the Zoom information within the week. For example, I emailed everyone a couple nights ago, so that gets updated. And if you have your notification in a way that you're not notified, then you won't know that there's been an update. Or maybe we updated based on a panel or some change in the program. So you want to be notified about that. So definitely make sure that that is the right way according to your needs. Other resources we have would be Brad transfer jobs. So these would be government jobs that you could research for. And that's through this Brad transfer jobs. Focus 2 allows you to determine your interests, personality, skills, and values. This would be done independently. However, I wouldn't take the results like a horoscope kind of a thing. It is something that you would definitely need to speak with a counselor about. It's not something that you just say, okay, the assessment told me to do this, I'm going to do this. It is definitely recommended to go over it with somebody. Our career guide allows you to manage your resumes, update your resume. We also have a new resource online, which is called VMOC. VMOC allows you to upload your resume, and it provides you with critique on it, on how to improve it and make it more relevant to the industry that you're applying for. The Vault Guide down here enables you to learn more about industries and it enables you to learn more about industries and look for jobs and learn what it would be like to work in that specific industry. It allows you to also research a employer, learn more about it so that you could become more knowledgeable and prepare for the interview. It is a really good resource, and we use it a lot to in our workshops to inform ourselves about a specific industry to educate students. So I cannot speak higher. I love the Vault. I don't know what I would do without it. It also allows you to look for jobs and internships, and it's a very good resource. This is what it looks like. So Vault rankings, you could see what companies rank high. You could research companies, learn more about it, how big are they, where they're located. All this information is definitely useful for you when you're preparing for interviews. Exploring internships, you can also research for internships. Career advice would be career intelligence, like what is it like to work in that? How can you be trained? What is the education requirement? So anything you need to do in order to prepare for it. If there's any blogs written about it. And then we also have vault guides, which means that there's like books that you can read online that look like this, that you can learn more about different industries. And the industries are shown on the left side of the page. So there's a huge variety of books that you can read and learn more about it. So for example, if you're going the finance field, what is it like to go, what are their interviews like? What is the Big Four interview like? International MBA job search, I mean, these are just snapshots, but there's a lot of information on this platform. Let's see. Also career advice, resume tips, cover letter, research industries. The most important thing to do in using this platform is to learn more about the company that you're going into in order to prepare for the interview. Additionally, you could use LinkedIn to learn more about it, as well as their own website if they have one. But you want to go in the interview being knowledgeable about the industry that you're going into, so that you could really sell yourself effectively in the interview. There's another resource called Interview Stream. Interview Stream is a kind of a question bank for interviews for different industries, and it allows you to research the types of questions that you could expect in a specific type of interview. For example, I had to research Big Four accounting Big Four questions because I'm doing a presentation next week. What could accounting students expect in an interview? And you can also film yourself and send it to someone to get feedback. You could watch yourself answer the questions and see how you're doing. It's a really good platform to use. And right now, because we're virtual, it's definitely a great plus. This is what it might look like. So many questions, many industries. Sorry, you might not be able to see this, but there's different question banks here. And that's what it would look like. Going Global is another platform that is also really good for international students to use. It allows you to learn about different companies around the world who are hiring. And it also allows you to see what companies are hiring or sponsoring the H-1B visas. It does show you a link to do that. Even if you're going to a different state or different city within the US for your internship, it allows you to learn more about that city and state. What are the costs of living? What is it like to work there, to live there? It has a lot of information about moving. Provides country-specific career and employment information. What is the industry like? Many of you may have gone to school in your home country. You might not know what it would be like to work there. This resource allows you to do research about what it would be like to work in a specific country, and some cultural trends that you may not be aware of. Learn more about different companies and the hiring trends of those companies. This is what Going Global looks like. Again, it looks kind of funky because I had to screenshot it, but it looks much better on their own website. This is the country guide, so you could see the different countries and do your research based on that. So it also has, for each country, has job search resources, how to find jobs, what are the employment trends, how to get a visa to work there if you're not a citizen, what is the work visa like. Cultural advice is really good. That's what I was talking about, going into it knowledgeable. What are the cultural trends? You'd be surprised what you learn in that. You'd really be surprised. Financial considerations, cost of living. Will this job that I'm being offered, would it allow me to live nearby, or would I have to move like half an hour away where the rent is more affordable for me? It would allow you to research all that important information. And then also company research. So who are these companies? What do they provide? Is it a good? Is it a service? What would I be doing? Really enable you to learn more about that company so that you can sell yourself during the interview and even decide if that's the company you want to work for. So that's what it would look like when you're learning about the company, how big it is and how many employees it has, where they are, and so forth. So again, enhancing your cultural acumen can definitely help you in landing that interview and really being able to sell yourself. And being aware of cultural do's and don'ts definitely comes in handy. I learned through my research that, for example, if you walk into I mean, now it's virtual, of course, but if you were doing the interview in person and you were wearing a jacket, um, it would not be appropriate for you to take off your jacket. If the other person is wearing theirs, it would be show of disrespect. Things that you would take for granted, not really know. Who would think that would be disrespect, but it might be, so you never know. So that's going global. Learning more about that country so that you can make an informed decision on whether or not you want to apply. In order to find companies that have hired interns in the past, this is the link for that. It's actually at the -U website. My colleague has done a lot of research on this, and she's posted her findings on their website. And also linked to OPT employers for 2012 through 14 is also there. So who has hired for OPT is also there for your utilization. So any questions on what I have presented? Sure, I will paste it in the chat. I'm gonna allow Tina to begin. Okay. Does anyone have any questions on my section? Nobody? Okay. Tina, you go ahead and share your screen with your section. Thank you,
All
everyone.
right, sure. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Could be evening from where you are possible, or morning. Well, nice to meet you all virtually. Let me go ahead and share my screen first. So thank you for taking the time to meet with us today, and hopefully after attending this workshop that Sanas and I are presenting will give you a better idea and how about employment options for F1 students in the US. And so that hopefully you have the opportunity easier for you to navigate through the handshake system and connect that with the CPT, with the employment authorizations that you're going to hopefully obtain something and then able to request for the appropriate work permit from the -U Center. So there are two types of employment authorizations that are available to F1 students who are currently holding valid F1 status with the university. So the two options are Curricular Practical Training, also known as CPT. The second option would be Optional Practical Training, also known as OPT. Probably you may, by now, you may have heard of your student fellows or many or staff from our office may have using some of these acronyms before. So go into more details. What is curricular practical training? So it is a work authorization for students in valid F1 status to engage in off-campus employment authorization. And whether you may want to call it the internship or employment as far as the US government's concerned is that you to engage in off-campus employment, F1 students are required to obtain work permit, and whether the actual employment, whether it's paid or unpaid, for legal purposes, most of the employers would like to know whether students do have work authorization to work in the US or not. And once you obtain the work authorization, it's employer specific. So for undergraduate students, students will need to enroll in the internship course, the 195. Most commonly course will be the 195 or the 199 in the quarter that you will be engaging in the internship. So for an example, if you are able to obtain an internship for the spring quarter, in order for us to authorize you the CPT, you would have to enroll in the 195 course for the spring term, along with your other coursework that will give you the minimum enrollment of 12 units to maintain your valid F1 status. And students, or once you have the employment offer, you can, and once we authorize the CPT, students can engage in 20 hours per week during the academic term, during the academic year. And we're referring to academic year would be fall, winter, and spring quarter. And then in the summer, you can engage in more than 20 hours per week. And if you are doing summer internship, you are only required to enroll in the 195 course, either for summer session A or summer C. And we will be able to authorize you summer. The duration for your summer internship is for the entire summer. So from late June all the way to, I believe the summer ends will be September 10, I believe, for this year. And how to enroll in the 195 course is if you are students from the college, you will have to enroll through the 195 course through the Center for Community Engagement. So that's where you will be able to enroll in the 195 course. The process for the 195 course is a little bit different than your other regular course enrollment. So what it is around, to get this process going, around week 7 of the prior quarter. So meaning if you do have an internship offer already and you wanted to obtain CPT for the spring, so around week 7 of this quarter, you will then reach out to Center for Community Engagement office and ask them about the process of how to enroll in the 195 course. So what they will do is the staff there, they will evaluate or review your job offer letter, and they will then approve it, the course for you to enroll in. They will provide you the PTE number to enroll in the course. Once you are enrolled in the course, you will then submit the CPT application request form to the DASHU Center, and the email address is listed there on the checklist. Then once you submitted the complete documents, then our office will issue you the CPT authorization, and that will come in a form of an update I-20. So that's for the undergraduate students. And then for graduate students, instead of the 195 course, graduate students will need to enroll in the 596 course for that internship. Similar exact requirements as the undergraduate students, where they can only engage in 20 hours per week during the academic year, which is fall, winter, and spring, and then more than 20 hours per week during the summer. And the 596 for the summer is enrollment is the same. You can enroll in either 596 in session A, summer session A, or summer session C. And we will be able to authorize you to engage in CPT for the entire summer. And once you, this is just an example, but once you are authorized for CPT, page 1 of your I-20 look very exact, nothing changed actually. You won't see the change. However, on page 2 of your I-20, as you can see, the student has a CPT, part-time CPT authorized, and this was for last winter quarter, winter 2020. And as you can see, where it say what we meant is by employer and quarter specific, as you can see the start and end date of the quarter there. It's actually exact start and end date, the end date of the winter quarter of last year. And then employer specific, where the employer's name is listed there. And then whether it's authorized for a part-time or a full-time basis. So once you obtain these documents, you can then present to your employer so they know that you are authorized to work with them. So that's the whole nutshell of CPT. And now I'm moving on to optional practical training. So what it is optional practical training is a work authorization for post-degree completion, meaning if you wish to remain in the US under your F1 status to engage in employment after completing your degree, then this would be your work authorization here, the OPT. So for OPT, it's not the DASHU Center approval, it's we can only make the recommendation to the government stating that the students are eligible based on their legal F1 status. They have met all the requirements to be eligible for OPT. Once we make that recommendation, students will then submit the application, the final application process to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, also known as USCIS. And USCIS is the agency that will determine the approval of your OPT application. And students can only get the OPT recommendations from the DASHU Center 3 months before they graduate. So if you're graduating in June, the earliest time you can start applying for OPT for the OPT I-20 with us would be March 10. And if you are graduating this quarter, I do encourage you to submit your OPT I-20 request to our office as soon as you can, because it takes our office 15 business days to process your request. And then it can take up to 4 months for USCIS to approve your OPT application. So that's why we highly encourage students to apply for OPT as soon as you know you're graduating, and also as soon as the 90-day timeline is permitted. So one difference with OPT is that earlier when I talked about CPT, where you do need to have an employment or an internship offer to apply for CPT, but with OPT, you do not need to have an employment offer at the time, initially when you first apply for OPT. And once you have your OPT approved, you can use your OPT work authorizations to work for multiple employers. It's not employer specific. But there's a couple requirements to having multiple employers. Each employment under OPT must be at least 20 hours per week. And each of the employment must be related to your field of study or your major, same as CPT. So if you are a chemical engineering and working as a programmer at Amazon or Google, that will not work, as far as the government is looking at the related relationship between your major and the work duties that you are performing at your employment. It's not about the relevant of the courses that you have taken during your degree. So it has to be major related, directly related to your major. And if students who are major in STEM majors, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, will be eligible or may be eligible for an additional 24 months of OPT. However, student will have to request for an additional 24 months of OPT when their initial 12 months of OPT is about to expire. So roughly 90 days before your initial 12 months of OPT expires. And if you are eligible for OPT STEM extension, then you can get in touch with the DashU Center again to apply for the OPT STEM extension I-20. So to be eligible for the STEM OPT extension I-20, student must be your employer, either the current employer or the future employer that you will be working for under STEM extension. They have to be an E-Verify employer. And you must go through the DashU Center to apply for the OPT I-20. And then part of the OPT, part of this process is that the students will need to submit the I-983 training plan, where the employer has to verify that they are an E-Verify employer, and such their E-Verify number is required for the I-983 training plan. And it's a 5-page training plan. The form is actually on our website on the DashU Center website under STEM OPT extension, in case if you're interested to see what the form, how it looks like. And the same process, you will have to submit another application fee for the STEM extension. And then it will take another roughly 3 to 4 months for your STEM OPT extension to be approved by the government. Once your OPT is approved, whether it's STEM OPT extension or the initial 12 months of OPT, students will be receiving the employment authorization document similar like this. It shows your basic biographical information as you indicated on your application form. And of course, through your passport verification and all of that. And then it has a validity date of your work permit. So if you're having a 1 year of OPT, then that 1 year of OPT will list it here. And if you do have the STEM OPT extension, it will have the 24 months of STEM OPT extension approved here once your application is approved. And once you're an OPT, you are required to submit your OPT employment information directly with the federal government. So once your OPT start date, the employment authorization date on the EAD card is current, then you will be notified by the US Department of Homeland Security to access their portal. They have a portal for you to report your OPT employment information there. So for students who are on the initial 12 months of OPT, they have 90 days of unemployment altogether during that 1 year of approved OPT. And if by the 90th day of your unemployment is up and you're still not employed, we highly encourage you to meet with one of our F1 counselor to know what your options are, because you really don't have a lot of time when that time is up, the 90 days of unemployment. At that point, your options is very limited. There will be possible that you may have to depart the US because the US government is monitoring and completing student status if their employment information is not reported in a timely manner. And same thing with STEM OPT. If you are on STEM OPT, you do have an additional, during the 24 months of STEM OPT, you have an additional 60 days of unemployment during that approved 24 months of OPT extension. Beyond the 60 days, and if you're still unemployed, the same options will apply as far as your status maintenance. So that is the nutshell of OPT. And the next is, so after OPT, what's next for students, right? You may probably, if the company is decided or interested in continue to offer the employment to you beyond the 12 months of OPT, beyond the 24 months of STEM extension, OPT STEM extension, and now they're like, oh, we would like continue to offer the employment to you. So the commonly known visa is the based on the employment base. So it's an professional occupation visa, known as H-1B. So usually H-1B petition has to be, your job has to be at least require a bachelor degree to perform that duties or the position. It is employer specific, so meaning you cannot get like a sponsorship from employer A, and then once the H-1B is approved, you decided to use that approval and work for employer B. It does not work that way. So you will have to, the employer B would have to petition for your H-1B in order for you to work with them. And the maximum duration of the H-1B status is up to 6 years. And the duration each time is usually an employer would sponsor the H-1B visa in an increment of 2 years per petition or 3 years per petition. That's up to the employer. And how, it's the H-1B, there are certain restrictions to it. So if your employer is part of the private industry sector, which is, Microsoft, Amazon, all the big, Fortune 500 companies, or beyond that, then they are subject to something called the H-1B quota. So what the quota does is it doesn't allow you as an applicant to apply for H-1B anytime you want. So you can only apply for H-1B beginning in April 1st. So if you want to have the 2021 H-1B status approval, then your first day you can file for the H-1B for this year would be April 1st. However, the validity date of your H-1B will not begin until October 1st of this year. And this is for private industry. So, and what the quota means is annually, there are only 85,000 H-1B visas are available for each fiscal year. Out of that 85,000 H-1B visas, the government is reserving 20,000 out of that for US graduate degree earned, meaning US earned master's or PhD degree. They put aside extra 20,000 to that aside for students in that category. And then the remaining general 65,000 would apply to all students, including bachelor's degree, master's, and PhD. And then there are, if you are Singaporean citizens, there's a separate H-1B visa applications for Singaporean students, citizens, and then there's different special H-1B visa for Chilean citizens, and then also it's not included on here, but for the Australian citizens, they do have their own separate H-1B where it doesn't get used up out of the remaining 65,000. And the rest who are not on the exemption list, the student will fall under the general 65,000 quota here. And there is another type of H-1B, it's called cap exempt. So what is cap exempt means? What it means is that employers can file for H-1B for the employee anytime throughout the year they want. But so who are those people, right? Who are those employers? So for example, institutions or Institute of Higher Education, university and colleges, just like UCLA. So if UCLA wants to, or once they identify a qualified staff or faculty who is currently overseas, the university can petition for this H-1B for the individual anytime they want. 300 out of the 365 days in a year, anytime they want. They're not subject to that cap, that quota. Another nonprofit organizations would be, some the research institute. For example, what's that? The National Health Institute, right? NIH. So that is one. And then government research organizations. So those are the nonprofit organizations that can bring individuals under H-1B anytime throughout the year. And I kind of briefly go over this a little already, but starting next month in the world of H-1B, what we know is the March Madness. What's the reason for the March Madness? This is just some of the fun examples for you. As you can see, I mentioned earlier, that there's only 85,000 H-1B coder available, right? But look at the trend over the years. What is the number of applications for H-1B that the government received? Almost triple, or some of them almost 4 times as much, right? So what it is probably you may have heard about the lottery system for H-1B and all of that. So this, as the result, the government say, hey, we are receiving way more applications than the actual number of visas are being available. So to make a fair process, what they have done over the years, and I think, they have been continued beyond 2018 actually, is they would, starting April 1st, they would allow, depending on the year, either 5 days or 1 week window to accept as many H-1B applications as possible during that application receiving window. Once they close that window, then they will be assigning a number, a lottery number, to each individual petitions that they have received. And if your petition is being selected for review, then they will review your petition. But it doesn't mean that once they receive your petition and they assign you a number, it doesn't mean that it's a guarantee H-1B approval. So just keep that in mind. It's a very competitive work out there for H-1B. So just to let you know, if your employers are interested in petitioning the H-1B, make sure your employer works with a good immigration attorney to get this process going. And the preparation for this applications process, it happened months before April 1st. So it's like the employer would have to be very proactive with this process. And the alternatives to the H-1B visa, what if, like, I'm the one that always be the unlucky one, trust me. When people play bingo, lottery, whatever it is, or random draw, all of my friends, they always get selected for something, but I'm the one that never get anything like in that sense. So if you are, like I said, I talked about this exception before, the Chilean, the Singaporean. If you are Mexican or Canadian citizen, instead of the H-1B, you can apply for something called the TN visa. It's under this is the old term, the NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Treaty Agreement. But I think now it has changed to a different name, but the visa type or the category remains the same as TN, where you don't have to go through the H-1B visa route. That's the beauty of it. And then for Australian citizens, you can apply for the equivalent of the H-1B visa, would be the E3 or up. And then if you're not fall under the TN or the Singaporean exemptions or the Chilean or the Australian, something you can think about is Sometimes we do have students who worked under OPT in the US for several years, return home, right? And through the work experience that you have acquired, the company, actually the overseas company, end up sending you back to work in the United States. So we do have students, for example, who may return home and work in Korea with for LG for a couple of, years. And then LG will then send the individual back to the US to work under this L visa. So sometimes it may not be the end of the world where the H-1B, may not be the only thing is available out there. You just have to be creative and gather your resources to learn additional information so that you can explore in different way of if you're really interested in continue working in the US beyond H-1B. And there are different type of visa treaties as well where you invest, where you may have this great idea and you want to invest in the United States. That is a possible option as well. But this is not my area of expertise to walk you in details, but this is just giving you a flavor of what is out there of the work visas so that you can have an idea of it as you can do read up more on it. So to summarize the whole thing is like there are many work visa options out there besides the H-1B. So what I'm saying is that don't get too hooked up with just the H-1B. Oh, it's running out and my life is over, right? That is not the case. If you work with a good immigration attorney, they will let you know what are other visa categories based on your skills that you have, and there is a potential that you can petition for other work visa as well. And that is to end my presentation. So I'm not sure if you students will, Sanas, are you there? See if you what's the format will be like, where you will have questions through the chat box, or I'm not sure. How would you like to proceed this?
Yes, there are some questions. There's a question, can I apply for an F1 visa right now using the winter 2021 I-20, or should I need to wait until I receive the I-20 for spring 2021? I'm an EMBA 2022 student.
So for the interest of time and the topic, for that student, I'll put in the chat, please email
How do we know if a job falls under our field of study enough that it's possible to do it through OPT?
well, the government does really leave it up for you to make that judgment, to make that call. So you would, depends on what's your major, right? For example, if your major is management, or, well, we don't have a management, but for example, if your major is econ or economics, and post-degree completion, you end up working at Starbucks. So what the government is looking for is not the identity of the employer. What they're looking for is, what are you doing at Starbucks? Are you doing management level? Are you doing, data analysis, trends, forecasting for Starbucks, right? That is part of your econs or related to your econ major. But if you're working at Starbucks as a barista, then that's not related to your major. If I hope I'm making that clear. Or if you're doing, biochemistry, you can work in a biotech company or for a pharmaceutical company, absolutely. But for OPT and CPT, minors will not be counted towards that employment related.
If a major is biochem, can I work for a biomedical company like a lab? Probably.
Yes, as long as, yes, yes. So yes, students can be eligible for another 12 months of OPT and another 24 months of STEM OPT extension upon completing each higher degree. So if you did your OPT, initial 12 months and STEM OPT on a bachelor's degree, and then move on to a master's degree, that is, if it's part of the STEM, yes, you will be eligible for the 12 months and 24 months for the STEM. But if your master's degree is a non-STEM major, then you can only get 12 months of OPT based on that master's degree, non-STEM master's degree.
Can I take a quarter off before applying to OPT?
Usually we wouldn't recommend that. I suggest the student to connect with us, schedule an appointment to meet with an F1 counselor, because taking time off from school, from UCLA, will have a negative effect on your F1 status. And if your F1 status cannot be restored after the leave of absence, then your OPT eligibility may not be there. So whichever student asked a question, please connect with the Dash U Center F1 counselor for more details.
Can you do OPT twice after each degree?
I think I just answered that question.
Oh,
Grace.
sorry.
Yeah.
If we're going to grad school, can we get OPT and gap for a year before the grad school enrollment? In that case, can I still get another OPT after graduating grad school? That's kind of together, no?
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure what's gap year means. Like, are they taking a break from UCLA and move on to a different school? Or are they taking a year off and then come back and resume at UCLA?
And gap year before grad school. I think gap year. So let me see. If we're going to grad school, can we get the OPT and gap year for a year before the grad school enrollment? I think that means do OPT, like have a job and then take a gap from school and then go back to school. Yeah, you could have a
So
year
after
between
school,
undergrad and grad.
yeah, I'm just not too clear on that questions. And again, this is just a very general information. If you have specific, very specific questions with regards to your case, I do want you to schedule an appointment with our F1 counselor so that you can have one-on-one meeting with our staff to personalize your question because I don't want to answer your, to details of your personal questions in a group.
I'm just reviewing the questions to see if we left any out. For OPT
There's a-
extension, do you need to stay with the same employer?
No, you don't. But whoever the new employer, they would have to complete the I-983 training plan, and the employer has to be an E-Verify employer.
Is this applicable to freshmen who hasn't entered the US and hasn't established an F1 status?
No, not yet. Not until students have established their valid F1 status for one academic year with UCLA.
We have to pay for the course even though we're just doing an internship? Yes.
Well, depends when though, right? If the 195 or the 596 course, if it's happened during the academic terms, which is fall, winter, and spring, there's no additional tuition fee being charged if you do have that course, right? So it has to be very clear how you ask the question as well. But for the summer, if you do enroll in 195 or the 596 course for the summer, then yes, tuition fee is required for those course. But keep in mind, one good thing with UCLA is that in the summer, students are paid based on the units of enrollment. It's not a flat fee like other quarters. And tuition fee in the summer is the same rate. You're paying the same rate as in-state tuition fee students. So whatever the number, the X dollars amount per unit in the summer that you see through summer sessions, that will apply to you as well. So in summer, tuition fee is the same for everyone.
Would you recommend mostly applying to companies that have a history of sponsoring OPT or CPT, or are there strategies that can help us get hired even with companies that don't have history? Even with the list of saying these companies have hired under CPT and OPT before, there's no guarantee that they'll do it again, but it just means that it's that likely is higher. That's all that means. It's not guaranteed that they will sponsor you. So trying with new employers can definitely benefit you in pursuing those types of occupations. However, there are some industries that don't hire international students because of security reasons. But aside from that, employers just need to be educated about what they need to do in order to hire international students, which is really not much. They just have to be willing to do so. The onus is really on the international student to apply for those jobs and apply for them and obey their F1 status rules.
I think there's one question asking about STEM extension, whether it's a Bachelor of Science or a Bachelor of Arts, if it's in physics, say it's BA in physics. So what we don't, what we're looking at, actually what the federal government is looking at is, if you take a look at your I-20 documents, on page 1 of your I-20, where it say the major code of instructions, that code, the 6-digit, is the code that determine whether it's STEM eligible or not. When we authorize you OPT, it will tell us that the federal government is based on that number. So that's the reason why it's not really based on whatever the name listed on your major, like your major name listed on your I-20. For example, I mean, we can call what, I don't know, economics and financial or in, here at UCLA, but another school may call it differently. So the name of the major is not really the indicator, is the code, the CIP code, the 6th code on your I-20 is the one that determine that.
Do we need to submit a research paper or summary of what we do in order for our jobs for the, oh, is that the, sorry, is that the code that you meant? If I did CPT for one summer, can I still do OPT after I graduate? Yeah, probably, huh? If I did CPT
Yes,
for
so
one
if
summer.
you have less than 12 months of full-time CPT, you will be eligible for, you can still be eligible for OPT. But if you have 12 months of full-time CPT altogether under the same degree, you will not be eligible for OPT.
Oh, wow.
So it's all or nothing. So usually we do look at students' requests by the time you reach 11.5 months of full-time CPT altogether. We do give students some warning.
Wow.
Unless the student decides, I don't care for OPT, just give me this full-time, I don't care for OPT, just give me this full-time CPT, and I'm aware that I will forfeit my OPT altogether. But
Wow.
as an undergraduate student or a master's degree student, having 12 months of full-time CPT is not possible. Because as an undergraduate student, by the 4th summer, you already graduated. And for a master's degree level, your degree, your time to degree is not gonna be 4 years. Occasionally, we may have PhD student who end up with this situation, but is really rare.
Can a freshman who hasn't entered the US and hasn't established F1 status take a remote US internship with CPT this summer?
Well, in order for us, if you haven't yet entered the US and established your valid F1 status, we will not be able to authorize you CPT because
Yeah.
CPT is part of that established valid F1 status. So if you have a company, if you're able to work virtually with a company that is currently in the US and they're allowing you to work from overseas without any work authorizations, that's between you and the employer. But if students have not yet established their valid F1 status with UCLA, yeah, we will not be able to authorize CPT for this purpose.
For those who are interested in going to grad school, how can they manage their incoming, their start date for grad school and their OPT? Could they do OPT and then go into grad school, or what would you recommend them to do?
I mean, it's up to each individual student. I mean, I can't really make a recommendation. So usually, I don't know, usually students start their school in the fall term. But whether they should work then grad school or grad school directly, that's really the decision of the student. Because what if they get a good admission offer to the graduate program and they say, no, let me go on OPT first and I apply later? The later year admission may not be guaranteed.
Yeah, but they could do OPT after each degree.
That's correct. So
Okay.
it has to be right following that degree. Right? So meaning you're finishing your bachelor degree now and you're like, you know what? I'm just gonna skip OPT based on my undergraduate. I'll go to graduate school. After completing my graduate school, I'll ask for 2 years of OPT because I didn't do my
Oh, you can't do that.
OPT in my previous degree. Now I'm finishing the second, so I should get, I'm asking for the time of OPT for the 2 degrees combined. It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. Okay. Let me see what questions are down here.
There's one question from Nora. It say, I'm confused regarding OPT each degree. I'm not sure if I'm not sure if
So I think
Nora.
you just answered that. You said you can't save your OPT to
Yeah.
do after grad school. You have to do it after each degree.
Mm.
So I think you answered it.
So right now, yes, one question is, do you have to be in the US to apply for OPT? Yes.
Yes.
DHS, even with COVID-19 pandemic, the US government has not changed the requirements about applying for OPT. Everything remains the same. No change in regulations with regards to OPT. So to apply for OPT, you must be in the US under your F1 status.
If someone graduated from UCLA, can they do OPT and do research at UCLA?
Well, yeah, there's many things to it. If the student has an approved OPT, right, they can use their approved OPT to work at UCLA, as long as their job at UCLA is related to their major. Like I said, OPT, you can work for any US employer, including UCLA, as long as your job duties are related to your major.
If someone got into grad school, can we still work at UCLA, or we have to get OPT for that? Say if it's a different grad school from UCLA. So that's the same thing. Wherever you go, you would still need OPT. But the grad school, what your program would have to be related to the OPT that you're getting hired for. Right, Tina?
I didn't quite understand. I didn't quite get the question.
If someone got into grad school, can we still work at UCLA? Or
Okay,
we
okay,
have to
pause.
get OPT
Wait,
for
wait.
the...
Sanas, pause right there. So where is the grad school? That's the first question I will have for the student is, if the grad school is at UCLA, right? Once you start your grad program with under the graduate program I-20, the remaining time of your OPT based on the previous degree will be automatically canceled. So meaning, if you got accepted to graduate school at USC and you still want to use the OPT work authorizations based on your previous degree at UCLA to work while studying at USC, no, you cannot. That work authorization will be automatically canceled once you begin your graduate study at that in the program. If your graduate program is at UCLA, your work authorizations will be automatically canceled as well. The only thing you can work would be up to 20 hours per week at UCLA if your program is at UCLA as on-campus employment, just like any graduate students. Either you work as a TA, a GSR, or a reader positions for up to 20 hours per week. But the remaining time of your OPT will be automatically canceled once you begin a new program, whether it's at UCLA at the same school or at a different school.
Do we need to do the H-1B lottery once we start our jobs? Can we do the H-1B lottery when doing CPT? No, probably. Does cognitive science count as BS, which can have a 3-year OPT? Probably yes.
Well, with the H-1B questions, you don't have to do H-1B if you don't want to, unless your employer is sponsoring, specifically say, hey, I want you to work for our company under H-1B sponsorship. It's that specific. I think there's a question say, if I did CPT for one summer, can I still do OPT after I graduate? Yes, as long as your full-time CPT altogether is less than 12 months.
There's a question, we also need to be in the US for applying for CPT, right? Probably right.
For CPT, that can be an exceptions. Like I said, depends on the student's situation. If they are a continuing student at UCLA since last year, then they can apply for CPT while abroad. As long as the company is allowing them to work remotely.
Right. That's really good.
Yeah, but in this past, there are a couple of employers, they say, no, you have to be in the US to engage in employment with us. And we have had a few students who got their internship offer withdrew because they were not able to return to the States.
Wow.
Due to the travel restrictions. Yeah, so that if you are a continuing student at UCLA since March or prior to March 2020, and you establish that valid F1 status with us, then yes, you can apply for CPT, whether you're in the US or remote. But you may want to check with your employer, be honest with them saying, hey, I'm currently abroad. And it looks like that by the time I start my internship with your company, I may not be able to physically be back in the States. Is that something that that they would allow you to work remotely? Some company may not, because sometimes you have to access their sensitive data remotely. And that's something that they don't want you to do. Is sometimes the wide firewall and security network. So
I think that's all the questions we had, Tina. Thank you so
I think
much.
there's one question about OPT, whether it's for STEM OPT work hours. For students who are on OPT, minimum hours, whether you're on regular, the 12 months of OPT or STEM, minimum of 20 hours per week. And there's no maximum hours. In the US, the labor law is the more you work, the number of hours, the more you work, the more tax you will pay to the government or the local cities. So that's why they're talking only but the minimum number of hours. If you have all the time in the world, you can work 80 hours a week. But hopefully enough where you gotta have your, life balance. Don't just work. Okay, thank you all for tuning in with our presentation. The DashU Center and the Career Center, we will be posting this something, I think, through the DashU Center YouTube channel, I believe. And then stay tuned. It may not get updated or posted immediately.
Yeah, I said about 2 weeks.
Yeah, it will be there. One of our staff is going to take the lead on this and post it on our YouTube channel.
That is
So
correct.
just look out for it. Okay.
Thank you so much, Tina.
Thank
It's
you,
always a
Joel, and
pleasure.
good luck with the quarter. I know it's been hard for everyone,
Yes, it
including the
has.
staff as well. And we can't wait to go back to Canvas.
That is true.
If you haven't yet been to UCLA, it's a beautiful campus.
Sure
And
is.
if you were a student at UCLA at some point and then went home for a break, I'm sure you do miss the campus as well.
That
So
is
we
true.
look forward to seeing you back on campus, and be safe and stay healthy.
Yes. Thank you so much, Tina.
All
Everyone,
right,
have a good
take care,
evening. Thank you for
everyone.
joining
Have a
us.
good evening or good morning over to the other side of the world. All right, take care.